I love my husband and our family more than anything, but after an exhausting week, a canceled Valentine's date, a terrifying search for my missing child, and realizing I was carrying everyone's emotions while silently falling apart myself, I'm scared I've finally reached the point. I'm going to start by saying this as clearly as I can. I love my husband so damn much. We've been together for over 16 years, and in that time we've weathered more storms than I ever imagined we would when we first got together. Life has thrown grief, stress, financial strain, parenting chaos, and our own personal struggles at us, but we've always managed to find our way back to each other. We've had rough patches, sure, but we've always tried to grow, heal, and show up better the next time. That's always been our thing. We don't quit on each other. Our family is beautifully chaotic and very neurodivergent, with 4 kids who each need different kinds of support, structure, and patience. For years, I've carried most of the emotional labor in the household. I've been the one keeping track of everyone's needs, smoothing conflicts, managing schedules, regulating meltdowns, and trying to model healthy emotional responses, all while still learning emotional regulation skills myself. Some days I do that well. Some days I absolutely don't. But I try constantly. Recently, my husband started going through his own emotional awakening, unpacking years of societal conditioning that taught him to bottle everything up. Watching him finally access feelings he'd buried for decades was huge, and I genuinely wanted to support him through that. I listened, reassured, held space, and encouraged him to talk things through. But eventually I hit a wall and had to be honest. I love him, but I cannot be his therapist. Trying to carry that role on top of everything else was more than I could handle. Thankfully, we both started therapy recently, which felt like a hopeful step forward. Then came this past week, and honestly, it broke me. I work as a substitute teacher, and I had accepted a 4-day assignment in a kindergarten classroom. Kindergarten isn't new territory for me. I've subbed in K plenty of times. I know it's loud, messy, unpredictable, and requires a ridiculous amount of energy. I joke that teaching kindergarten is like herding kittens, chaotic, but usually manageable chaos. When the school warned me this particular class was challenging, I took it seriously but figured it would be the usual level of difficult. I was told their regular PAR educator would be in the room too, so I felt reasonably prepared. I was not prepared. From the moment the first day started, it was clear this class was on another level entirely. There were a handful of sweet kids who genuinely tried to listen and learn, and honestly, they were the only thing keeping me from walking out. The rest of the class felt like non-stop, full-volume mayhem. Kids were constantly running across the room, climbing on top of tables, and screaming over instructions purely because they thought it was funny. Some were climbing into lockers. Others were wrestling each other on the floor, and at one point I had to physically separate 2 kids because one was trying to choke the other. Furniture got scratched up with pencils and paper clips. Chairs were shoved and knocked over. One student mashed a muffin deep into the carpet like it was some kind of science experiment. Food got thrown. Supplies disappeared. It felt like every time I redirected one child, 3 more were already doing something else dangerous. One kid managed to hijack his school iPad, attempted to call 911, and then spent his assigned computer learning time crawling under the table watching YouTube instead of doing his program. I was constantly scanning for safety hazards, trying to maintain some kind of order, and attempting to teach at the same time, which felt nearly impossible. By the end of that very first day, I made it to the break room and completely fell apart. Not quiet tears, full, shaking sobs that I couldn't hold back even if I tried. Still, I went back the next day. And the next. Every afternoon I came home utterly drained, like someone had wrung every drop of energy out of me. But there was no real chance to recover because life at home didn't pause. That same week we had extra evening commitments, including 3 of my kids' parent-teacher conferences. So after surviving a day of classroom chaos, I'd come home, switch straight into mom mode, help with homework, coordinate schedules, get everyone fed, and make sure we got to conferences on time. I kept pushing myself, because that's what parents do. I also made a conscious effort to still show up in my relationship. Even though I felt like a zombie by the time the kids were settled, I tried to spend time with my husband, talk about our days, and maintain some sense of connection. I knew he was working through a lot emotionally, and I didn't want him to feel unsupported. So I kept giving, even when I could feel my own tank hitting empty. By the end of the week, I was beyond exhausted, not just tired, but that deep, bone-level depletion where your brain feels foggy, your body aches, and even small decisions feel overwhelming. I knew I had already pushed past my capacity and desperately needed rest, quiet, and maybe just a few hours where no one needed anything from me. Saturday morning started like it usually does, with my husband coming over to cuddle. Normally, I love that quiet closeness before the chaos of the day begins. But when his hands started wandering, testing the waters, I gently told him I wasn't up for anything. I was beyond tired, the kind of exhaustion that sits deep in your bones after pushing yourself too hard for too long. He immediately pulled away. There wasn't a fight, just a heavy shift in the room. A moment later, he got out of bed, and soon I heard him downstairs yelling at the kids for not doing their chores. His voice was louder and harsher than usual, sharp enough that it made my chest tighten. I lay there staring at the ceiling, already feeling irritation creeping in on top of the fatigue. When he came back into the room, the frustration was obvious. I decided to just get up and start the day, partly to check on the kids and partly because pretending everything was fine felt impossible. Even though I was annoyed at how he handled things, I still checked in on him and asked if he was okay. That's when he told me he was frustrated with me for rejecting him, that he misses feeling desired, and that it had already been 2 days since we'd had sex. Hearing that while I was running on empty made something inside me sink. I told him calmly that I wasn't okay with him taking that frustration out on the kids. He got defensive and said I was making him sound like a bad father. I reassured him I didn't think that at all. He's a great dad, and we all have moments we don't handle perfectly. I just wanted us to do better. We tried to move on because we had plans to grab coffee for a simple Valentine's date. But as we were getting ready, everything fell apart. My 9-year-old came running upstairs in a panic holding a note from my 11-year-old saying she'd run away. Instantly, nothing else mattered. Our date was canceled, replaced by pure fear and adrenaline. My husband and I split up to search the neighborhood, while I called every friend of hers whose number I had, my hands shaking as I tried to stay calm enough to talk. My brain was already fried from the week, and now it felt like it was completely short-circuiting. All I could think was, please let her be safe. My husband eventually found her at a nearby park. She had no shoes, no jacket, just shorts, a short-sleeved shirt, and a backpack stuffed with toys. When I saw her, the rush of relief hit first. Overwhelming, dizzying relief that she was okay. Right behind it came anger, fear, confusion, and the leftover exhaustion that had never left in the first place. It was too many emotions stacked on top of a system that was already overloaded. When we got home, my husband told me he needed me to hold him and reassure him. So I did. I pushed everything I was feeling aside, the fear, the anger, the exhaustion, the fact that I hadn't even processed what had just happened, and I focused on taking care of him. I held him. I comforted him. I tried to be the steady place. Then he asked if I could compliment him. And that's where my brain just stalled. I have ADHD, and sometimes when I'm mentally overloaded, pulling words together on the spot is incredibly hard. It's not that the feelings aren't there. They are, intensely. I love the hell out of that man. I admire him. I appreciate him. But in moments where my brain is already fried, it's like the pathway between feeling and speaking just shuts down. He knows this. We've talked about it many times. But that day, my hesitation felt to him like confirmation of every negative thought already circling in his head. He took my struggle to find words as proof that I didn't value him enough. And when I wasn't in a place to dive deep into processing his emotions because I was barely holding myself together, he withdrew again. He spent most of the weekend upstairs in the bedroom while I handled everything else. I took care of the kids, managed the house, dealt with the aftermath of the runaway scare, and kept life moving. I didn't even have space to feel my own emotions because I knew if I stopped, the exhaustion would completely take over, and I still had to function. What hurt most was that he knew how hard my week had been, knew how depleted I was, and still needed me to carry his emotional weight too. When I finally hit my limit, it felt like that became another way I'd let him down instead of a sign that I needed support myself. Even so, I tried. Every night after the kids were in bed, I made sure to sit with him, cuddle, and watch our show together. From the outside, things probably looked normal enough. But inside, I felt like I was running on fumes. No time to recharge. No quiet moment to breathe. No chance to process the chaos, the fear, or the emotional weight of the week. Just the constant pressure to keep going because stopping didn't feel like an option. By Monday, I felt like I was barely holding myself together. I was moving through the day on autopilot, doing what needed to be done for the kids and for work, but inside I felt hollowed out. That morning, my husband tried to check in with me. He asked how I was doing, and the only honest answer I had was that I was exhausted. Not just tired, but deeply, painfully drained in a way that sleep alone couldn't fix. Then he asked if I was upset with him. I hesitated because I didn't want to start another argument. Everything already felt fragile, like one wrong word would tip the whole house into chaos.
But I also didn't want to lie.
So I admitted, carefully, that I was a little frustrated that I'd had to handle the entire weekend mostly on my own, especially after the week I'd just survived. The shift in him was immediate. He got defensive and said, "I'm not a mind reader. How am I supposed to know you need help if you don't ask?" I went quiet. I could feel anger rising fast, hot and overwhelming, and I knew if I spoke right then it might explode. I wasn't trying to punish him or shut him out. I was trying to keep the situation from escalating. But before I could gather myself, he stormed out of the room. A couple of minutes later, he came bursting back in, intense and upset, saying I wasn't allowed to ice him out, and that we were having this discussion right now. He repeated the question. How was he supposed to know I needed help? Something in me snapped. I replied, "Couldn't you hear me dealing with things?" And after that, everything I'd been holding back came pouring out. All the frustration, the exhaustion, the bottled-up fear from the weekend, the emotional overload from the past week, it all surfaced at once. I yelled, which I almost never do with him, but I felt like I had nothing left in me to contain it. I told him I couldn't handle anything else. I was exhausted beyond my limit. I still hadn't processed my own feelings about our daughter running away, the fear, the anger, the relief, because I'd been too busy taking care of everyone else in the house. The kids needed stability. The household needed running. And he had needed reassurance and emotional support too. I'd pushed my own feelings aside for all of it, and now there was just nothing left. He told me he didn't feel safe sharing his feelings with me. He said that whenever he tried, he could see walls go up in my face, like I couldn't handle what he was feeling, like he was too much for me. Hearing that hurt, but what really terrified me was what he said next. He told me he felt like our marriage was crashing. The word crashing hit me like a physical blow. Suddenly, my chest felt tight, my thoughts racing, panic flooding in faster than I could control it. I felt like the ground beneath me was giving way. I couldn't think clearly, couldn't respond, couldn't even breathe properly. All I knew was that I needed to get out of the house. I told him I needed to go to the store, grab my keys, and left as fast as I could. I didn't even remember the drive there. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in the parking lot at Smith's, completely unraveling. I sobbed in the car for nearly 2 hours. The kind of deep, uncontrollable crying that leaves you shaking and exhausted afterward. It felt like everything I'd been holding in for weeks, maybe longer, finally forced its way out. Eventually, I cried myself empty enough that the tears stopped. Not because I felt better, but because I felt numb. I wiped my face, forced myself to go inside, walked the aisles like a ghost, and then went home. Since then, the past couple of days have felt surreal. I'm functioning, technically. I get the kids where they need to go. I show up to teach. I respond when people talk to me. From the outside, I probably look normal enough. But inside, I feel like I'm walking around in a daze. Any moment I'm not actively engaged with someone, I just zone out. My mind goes blank. I don't think about anything because thinking means feeling, and I'm honestly scared that if I start feeling everything, I won't be able to hold it together. It feels safer to stay numb, like a zombie just moving from task to task. I know we need to talk about what happened. I know we can't just leave things hanging like this. But I also don't know how to have that conversation when I feel this depleted and fragile. I have therapy today, and I'm hoping that helps me sort through at least some of what I'm feeling and what I need. I love my husband. I love our family. I don't want our marriage to fall apart. But right now, I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to carry anyone else while I'm struggling just to stay afloat myself. So I keep wondering, am I the a-hole in this situation? I know I've been very wrapped up in my own experience lately, and maybe that makes me self-centered. Maybe I should have communicated more clearly, asked for help more directly, or handled my emotions better. I just honestly don't know how I'm supposed to meet anyone else's needs right now when I feel like I'm barely functioning myself.